12 R&B artists. Some are fighting right now, some didn't make it, and the ones we've lost, they left while their music was still playing in somebody's living room, somebody's car, somebody's wedding reception. These aren't just names on a list. These are the people who scored the soundtrack of your life. And a few of them are going through something that not enough people are talking about. Stay with me. Number 12, Chris Jasper, the Isley Brothers, Isley, Jasper, Isley. Here's a name that might not ring a bell immediately, but if you grew up listening to the Isley Brothers, and you know you did, then his fingerprints are all over the music that shaped you. Chris Jasper, keyboardist, songwriter, the quiet architectural genius inside one of R&B's greatest families. He passed on February 23, 2025. He was 73 years old, and when he went, a piece of Isley Brothers history went with him that most people will never fully account for. Now, to understand Chris Jasper, you have to understand the Isley Brothers family tree. It's time to stand up and fight. By the early 70s, Ronald, Ernie, and Marvin had joined the original trio, O'Kelly and Rudolph, and expanded the group into something bigger and more complex. And in the middle of all that, a classically trained keyboardist from Cincinnati married into the family. Chris Jasper married Ronald's sister, Margie. And suddenly this man who had studied music with serious intention was part of one of the most important groups in black music. He wasn't just a session player anymore. He was an Isley. And here's where his story gets interesting. By 1984, the group split, not from drama, but from creative ambition. Ernie, Marvin, and Chris stepped back from the main group and formed Isley Jasper Isley, and instead of fading out, they put out Caravan of Love in 1985. That song traveled. It caught enough ears across the Atlantic that the Housemartins, a UK group, covered it a cappella and took it all the way to number 1 in Britain. Chris Jasper's melody, somebody else's chart glory. His legacy doesn't live in the big pop moments. It lives in the texture of the Isley Brothers catalog from the mid-70s onward. All those records, the ones playing at the cookout, at Sunday dinner, in somebody's basement on a summer Saturday, had his hands on the keys. And in late 2024, the family announced he had been battling cancer. Ronald Isley, upon his passing, called him a musical genius, a lyricist, an extended member of the Isley family, and a key part of the sound that shaped generations. Those words mean something when they come from the man who shared both blood and music with him. He was gone by February 23, 2025, quietly, with dignity. The world didn't grieve him the way it should have. But somewhere tonight, somebody is playing an Isley Brothers record and feeling something they can't name. And what they're feeling is partly the work of a man most people never saw. Number 11, Cissy Houston. She sang backup for Elvis Presley and Jimi Hendrix. She recorded the original version of Midnight Train to Georgia, years before Gladys Knight turned it into a standard. She won 2 Grammy Awards for gospel, and she outlived her daughter and her granddaughter. Cissy Houston was 91 years old when Alzheimer's disease took her on October 7, 2024. But the weight of that last chapter, her mind slowly erasing everything while the world remembered everything about her family, that's the part that still sits heavy. Most people know her as Whitney's mother, and that's fair. Whitney's voice was born from Cissy's voice. You can hear it in the phrasing, in the depth, in the way a note gets held just a half second longer than you expect. But before Whitney was a star, before she was anybody, Cissy was already a legend in session rooms all over New York. She sang background on records that went gold. She sang for Aretha Franklin, Luther Vandross, Dionne Warwick, David Bowie. If you've heard any of the great records from the late 60s through the 80s, there's a real chance you've heard Cissy Houston without knowing it. Here's the thing about Cissy that most people walk right past. She could have been the star. She had the voice for it, but she kept stepping back. She stepped back to take care of family. She stepped back so her daughter could have the room to become what she became. And when record label scouts were circling Whitney while she was still in high school, it was Cissy who said, "Wait, let her finish school first." That's a mother who understood that timing is everything, even when the world is ready before you are. She buried Whitney in 2012. She buried Bobby Christina in 2015. 2 generations, gone under circumstances that broke hearts around the world. And she kept going. She kept singing. She kept that family together, even when the grief was unfathomable. And then in those final years, Alzheimer's slowly started erasing the memories she had fought so hard to carry. The woman who remembered everything, every note, every lyric, every prayer, losing access to it all. There's something unbearably specific about that cruelty. A woman who poured her whole life into memory, into music, into family, into keeping the people she loved alive in the singing, forgetting. If you've ever watched someone you love disappear while they're still in the room, you know that particular grief has no name that covers it. October 7th, 2024. Surrounded by family. At home in Newark. Cissy Houston may not have had the stadium concerts, but the voice inside those concerts, the voice behind that voice, that was hers first. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 10, Sam Moore, Sam and Dave. The opening of Soul Man is one of those moments in music history where everything just locks in. The horns, the groove, and that voice, massive, commanding, gospel-soaked, hitting you like a freight train before the first verse even gets started. That was Sam Moore. He was 89 years old when he died on January 10th, 2025, from complications following surgery. And what hurts about that is this. He outlived everything. He outlived his partner by almost 4 decades. He outlived the era that made him famous. And in the end, what took him wasn't the road. It was a surgery. Sam Moore and Dave Prater. Together, they were one of the great duos in American music. Stax Records, Memphis, 1966. Hold On, I'm Comin' became a #1 R&B record and announced a new kind of soul. Urgent, joyful, built for full rooms and maximum feeling. The following year, Soul Man went to #2 on the pop chart.
Don't you need a soul man? Yeah. Soul man.
These two men were everywhere, and the way they worked together, the call and response, the energy, the way they pushed each other, that was something you couldn't manufacture. But here's what most people forget.
I'm a soul man. I'm a soul.
Dave Prater died in 1988, a car accident. Sam Moore lost his partner, his counterpart, the other half of his professional identity, and he was still in his early 50s, and instead of disappearing, he kept going.
I'm a soul man.
Solo shows, collaborations, a famous duet with Bruce Springsteen on a live version of Soul Man. He stayed in the game for another 4 decades, carrying the music forward on his own. There's something about that kind of endurance that demands respect. When you lose the person you built everything with, and you find a way to keep building, that's not just professional loyalty. That's a person who genuinely loved what they made. And then at 89, complications from surgery took him. Not the stage, not the decades of travel. A surgery that was supposed to be manageable. Sam Moore was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992, alongside Dave Prater. Soul Man has been covered by the Blues Brothers, by James Brown, by artists who were born after the record first charted. The song is bigger than either of them, and that's the best kind of legacy there is. January 10th, 2025, Sam Moore went quiet, but that voice, that particular way of grabbing hold of you in the first measure and not letting go, that's still playing somewhere right now. Number 9, Frankie Beverly, Maze. There are certain songs that feel like they've always existed, like they weren't written so much as discovered. Before I Let Go is one of those songs. And the man behind it, Frankie Beverly, was one of those artists whose quiet greatness only becomes fully visible after they're gone. He passed on September 10th, 2024. He was 77 years old. His family never disclosed the cause of death, just that he was gone. Just that the man in white who had commanded stages for 50 years was no longer here. Frankie Beverly, born Howard Beverly, started his group in Philadelphia in the early 70s, originally calling them Raw Soul. And if that name tells you anything, it tells you everything. He was never chasing polish, never chasing crossover. What he was chasing was something more specific and more difficult to define. That feeling at a family reunion, at a block party on a July Saturday afternoon, when the music is exactly right and everybody is right where they're supposed to be. Maze made music for that feeling, and they did it for 50 years without changing who they were to get there. Here's what still gets me about Maze. They were never nominated for a Grammy. They never had a #1 pop hit. Their last studio album came out in 1993. And yet, They sold out shows for decades on the strength of records that lived in the community. Joy and pain, happy feelings, golden time of day. You know every song. Your parents know every song. The question isn't whether Frankie Beverly mattered. The question is why the mainstream never caught up. In 2024, he announced a farewell tour. He said, "Let the music of my legacy continue." He performed those final shows. He gave the people who loved him the goodbye they deserved. And a few weeks after the last performance, he was gone. His family asked for privacy. They kept the cause of death to themselves. And the world, respecting the man the way he'd always respected his audience, gave them that space. At the 2025 Cincinnati Music Festival, the tribute to Frankie Beverly stopped the crowd cold because nobody needed an introduction. Everyone already knew. That's what a real legacy looks like. Not the charts, not the awards, just the music inside the people. September 10th, 2024, Frankie Beverly went home. But the next time you play Before I Let Go at a gathering, and you know you will, just know he's still in that room with you. Number 8, Jerry Butler, The Impressions. Jerry Butler was 17 years old when he recorded For Your Precious Love in 1958. 17. And the voice that came out of that teenager, deep, smooth, carrying a weight of feeling that had no business being in a kid that young. It stopped people. It stopped producers. It stopped anybody in the room who heard it because there was nothing else to do but stop and listen. Jerry Butler died on February 20th, 2025 from Parkinson's disease. He was 85 years old, and he went out the way he lived, with more quiet dignity than most of us will ever figure out how to manage. Butler was a founding member of The Impressions alongside Curtis Mayfield, and they met in Chicago as teenagers with something to say and an extraordinary ability to say it. For Your Precious Love was their breakthrough, a record that announced something arriving in American music that the charts weren't fully ready for. Mayfield got a lot of the long-term credit, rightfully so. But Butler's voice was the vehicle that made people first pay attention. That voice was the reason the record traveled. He went solo in the mid-60s, and instead of fading after the split, he came back harder. By 1968, Hey Western Union Man had gone to #1 on the R&B chart. And then, Only the Strong Survive, recorded in 1968 and released in 1969, became one of the defining vocal performances of that whole decade. They called him the Iceman. Cool, controlled, unshakable. But underneath every single note, you could feel the fire. The man had range in the most literal sense, not just octaves, but emotional range. The kind that only comes from living something. And here's the part of Jerry Butler's story most people don't know. After his music career wound down, he didn't disappear. He ran for public office. He became a Cook County commissioner in Illinois. He served the community he came from for years. He was a man, not just an artist. And then Parkinson's disease took hold in his final years. The disease that shakes the body from the inside, the one that robs you of control in exactly the way Jerry Butler had always been known for having control. Some of y'all have watched someone go through that, and you know that there's a specific grief in seeing someone who carried themselves with that kind of unshakable composure lose the ability to be still. That's a different kind of goodbye.
Oh, but you'll never meet 'em if you give up now and say
February 20th, 2025. Jerry Butler was gone, but only the strong survive sounds like something he left on purpose, like instruction.
with your head hung down.
Number 7, Dwayne Wiggins. Tony. Feels good. Anniversary. It never rains in Southern California. If you heard any of those records in the early 90s, at a house party, on the radio, at a slow drag somewhere where the lights were low, you felt something. And the man who helped build all of it from the ground up was Dwayne Wiggins. He died on March 7th, 2025, at 64 years old, after more than a year of battling bladder cancer. And the thing that hits hardest about his passing is this. Just 2 years before he died, he and his family had finally come back together for the first time in nearly 30 years. Tony was a family thing from the very beginning. Dwayne Wiggins and his brother Raphael Sadiq, born Charles Wiggins, grew up in Oakland, California, with their cousin Timothy Christian Riley. 3 people who knew each other from birth, building a sound that bridged the gap between classic soul and what was coming next. They weren't chasing hip-hop and they weren't doing traditional pop. They were just being themselves, rooted in real musicianship, and audiences everywhere responded to exactly that. But here's something about Dwayne that most people walking past the credits never knew. After the group went quiet in the late 90s, he kept working, behind the scenes, as a mentor. He worked with artists who would grow up to define the next generation of music. Zendaya, Her Kalani, Destiny's Child. He was in those rooms, planting seeds. He understood that legacy isn't just what you put on your own records. It's what you help someone else find in theirs. And that kind of generosity doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Then the reunion happened in 2023. The 3 original members, on stage together, for the first time since the 90s, as the family they'd always been. You can imagine what that moment felt like. Not just for the artists, for every person in that audience who had been waiting on exactly that moment for 3 decades. They had made peace, the wounds had healed, and they were back together. Within a year of that reunion, Dwayne was gone, bladder cancer, more than a year of fighting. And the part that stays with me, the cruelest part, is that they had just found their way back to each other. Just when the reunion felt like a beginning, his body was already inside something it couldn't win. If you've ever watched someone reunite with people they love at the wrong end of their health, you understand how bittersweet that is. How you hold the joy and the grief at the same time and don't know which one to feel first. Dwayne Wiggins, March 7th, 2025. The music he built with his family is still woven into some of the best moments of a lot of people's lives. Number 6, Bobby Brown. There's an image of Bobby Brown that's lived in the public eye for a long time. The bad boy, the headlines, the legal trouble, the addictions, and there's so much noise around all of that, so many layers of tabloid and tragedy, that something important has gotten lost in the middle of it. In his own biography documentary, in his own words, Bobby Brown revealed that behind all that noise, he had 2 heart attacks. 2. And he had 2 cardiac stents placed in his heart to keep him alive. The man who once danced like nobody else on a stage, who built a career on physical presence and unstoppable energy, almost died quietly when the world wasn't looking at the right thing. His story starts in Roxbury, Boston. Youngest member of New Edition at 13 years old. By 16, he's on national television. By 19, Don't Be Cruel had made him the best-selling solo artist on the planet. 9 million copies. My Prerogative. Every Little Step. Roni. These records didn't just chart. They defined what the late 80s and early 90s looked and felt like. There was nobody cooler. Nobody who moved like Bobby Brown on that stage. And then everything started to compound. The marriage that the world watched closely, the addiction, the legal trouble. And then, in the span of a few years, he lost Whitney Houston, then lost his daughter Bobby Christina, then lost his son Bobby Jr. 3 people gone, 3 separate tragedies. And he said it himself. Losing my daughter hurt me to my core. Children are not supposed to go before their parents. I started drinking a lot. And then the heart attacks came. My drinking had gotten to a point where my bodily functions were starting to quit on my body. I had 2 heart attacks. I had 2 stents in my heart. And if you've ever watched grief do that to somebody, turn inward, turn self-destructive, turn the body into the target, you already understand what happened. You don't have to agree with every choice. You just have to understand what loss at that level can do to a person when they don't have the tools to carry it. Here's what's important. Bobby Brown is still standing. He goes to AA meetings. He has a sponsor. He said himself that every day is a fight. He's 57 years old with stents in his heart and more loss in one family than most people see in a lifetime. Some people call him a cautionary tale. Others say he's a survivor. You probably already know which side you're on. Number 5, Freddy Jackson. Rock Me Tonight, You Are My Lady, Jam Tonight. If you were dating in the mid-80s and those records were playing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Freddy Jackson was the smooth voice that made R&B romance feel like an art form. And in September 2024, he came forward publicly, with grace, with vulnerability, with the kind of openness that characterized everything he ever put on a record. And announced that he has been diagnosed with kidney disease. He's 68 years old. And the voice that once hit those notes with such effortless authority is now attached to a man who is fighting for his quality of life, one day at a time. Freddy Jackson came up in Harlem. He sang in gospel choirs. He did the session work, the background work, the church circuit work that builds a real vocalist from the inside out. Not the kind of training that makes you technically correct, but the kind that makes you feel true. And then in 1985, Rock Me Tonight hit #1 on the R&B chart. And what made that record wasn't just the song, it was the way he sang it. Like every line was something he actually meant. Like the person he was singing to was the only person in the world. By 1986 and 1987, he had consecutive hits on the R&B chart. Have You Ever Loved Somebody? Tasty Love, Nice and Slow. He was one of the most consistent voices in adult contemporary R&B. And then something started shifting around 2024. Fans who caught him performing noticed a change in his voice. His frame had shifted, he seemed smaller than they remembered, and before the announcement was ever made, the people who had been paying attention were already worried. When he finally came forward in September 2024, he said something that stayed with me. He said, "My health is more important than the stage," and he partnered with the National Kidney Foundation to turn his personal battle into a platform. That's what certain people do. They take the hardest thing happening to them and try to make it mean something for somebody else. It doesn't make the diagnosis easier, but it says something about who Freddy Jackson is as a person. Kidney disease doesn't announce itself the way a heart attack does. It creeps, and by the time you can feel it, it's already been working for a while. And the fact that he stepped back from performing to prioritize his health, from a man who lived for that stage, says everything about how serious this is. He's still here, still fighting. And somewhere tonight, Rock Me Tonight is playing in someone's living room, bringing back everything that made the 80s feel like possibility. Number 4, I'll Be Sure. In the summer of 2022, I'll Be Sure collapsed while working on new music in the studio. He was taken to the hospital, and then he disappeared. Not in the gradual, quiet way some artists disappear, but suddenly, without announcement. For 2 months, nothing. And then, in October 2022, his son took to Instagram and said, "Pops has been hospitalized for 2 months. He just made it out. 2 months. In a coma." And everything his body went through in those 2 months, most people's worst nightmare doesn't come close. I'll Be Sure was 21 years old when Night and Day went to #1 on the R&B chart in 1988. That record announced a voice built for intimacy, smooth, measured, designed for the space between two people late at night. He was New Jack Swing's quieter side. Off on Your Own Girl, Rescue Me, If I'm Not Your Lover. These were records you listened to alone, in the dark, when you needed to feel something real. He was Grammy nominated. He won American Music Awards. At 21, he was as hot as it gets. And then one afternoon in 2022, he collapsed. Multi-system organ failure, renal failure, acute on chronic liver failure. He was intubated. He was on a ventilator with a tracheotomy. His doctors were considering hospice. Let that sit for a moment. Hospice, for the man behind Night and Day. While he was in that hospital bed, Snoop Dogg, Halle Berry, and Vice President Kamala Harris were among those sending prayers. The man who sang love songs in the dark was fighting for his next breath. He woke up. 2 months after the coma began, he opened his eyes, and what came after was a relearning of everything. Breathing without a machine, walking, speaking. He said it himself, what people don't truly understand, unless you've been through this type of medical journey, is taking for granted breathing, tying your shoes, speaking. And as part of his treatment, he received a liver transplant, a new liver. He said he was going to treat it well. He's been recovering since. Slower than he'd like, but present. And he's since become an advocate, the executive chairman of a nonprofit fighting for equal access to organ transplants in America. Turned his near-death experience into something that could save other people's lives. Because when you come that close and you survive, you have to do something with it. You can't just walk back into the room and pretend it didn't happen. I'll be sure. He's still here, still recovering, and night and day still sounds exactly like what it was made for. That late night, that low light, that feeling you can't put into words, but you know when you feel it. Number 3, Roberta Flack. The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face stayed at number 1 on the pop chart for 6 weeks in 1972. 6 weeks. That doesn't happen. And Killing Me Softly with his song won the Grammy for Record of the Year and the Grammy for Song of the Year at the 1974 ceremony, making Roberta Flack the first person in history to win Record of the Year in back-to-back years. She built a catalog that most artists spend their entire careers trying to reach. And then ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, took her voice before it eventually took her life. She died on February 24, 2025. She was 88 years old. Roberta Flack grew up in North Carolina and Virginia. She was a prodigy who earned a full scholarship to Howard University at 15 years old, studying classical piano. She was working as a school teacher and playing piano at a club in Washington, D.C. when Clint Eastwood heard her perform The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face and used it in his 1971 film. Radio stations played it. And suddenly this classically trained woman, with a voice that could reach places most singers couldn't find, she was everywhere. And she was never going to be a category that fit neatly into a format. Here's something that stopped me cold while I was putting this together. In 1983, Roberta Flack and Peabo Bryson recorded Tonight I Celebrate My Love together. 2 voices, 1 song. You'll hear Peebo's name again in just a moment, in the number 2 spot on this list. Both of them gone, within months of each other. For a while, and there 2 people who made music together, who shared something in the recording of that song, now both on the other side. I didn't know what to do with that when I realized it. I still don't, completely. In November 2022, her team announced she had ALS, a progressive nervous system disease that takes control of your muscles, and in Roberta Flack's case, the muscles that control the voice. Her manager said the disease had made it impossible to sing and not easy to speak. Think about what that meant for Roberta Flack specifically. Her voice was her whole identity, the thing that made her, her, and yet she stayed creative. She published a children's book in 2023 called The Green Piano, about her childhood and her first relationship with music. She was still present, still making things, until she wasn't. There's no negotiating with ALS. It doesn't reverse. And when her team announced the diagnosis, they said, but it will take a lot more than ALS to silence this icon. They were right, because even without her voice, she was still creating, still reaching, until cardiac arrest took her on February 24th, 2025. Roberta Flack, the first person to win Record of the Year back-to-back, the voice behind some of the most intimate recordings in the history of soul music. Number 2, Peabo Bryson.
Let your heart decide.
25 days ago, that's how long it's been since Peabo Bryson died, June 2nd, 2026. He suffered a stroke and passed at 75 years old. And if you're watching this and the news still feels fresh and unsettled, you're not alone, because Peabo Bryson was the voice behind your parents' slow dances, behind your own slow dances, behind moments you've had that you can barely put into words. He was Beauty and the Beast. He was A Whole New World. He was Can You Stop the Rain, playing through someone's speakers at a graduation dinner, at a summer cookout, at some moment in your life that mattered. And he's gone, and it's still hitting. Robert Peabo Bryson was born in Greenville, South Carolina in 1951. He was singing backup in local bands by 14 years old. He signed his first record deal in Atlanta.
Shining, shimmering, splendid.
His debut album came out in 1976, and by 1978, Reaching for the Sky had given him his first real R&B chart success.
I can't go back to where you.
Over the next 4 decades, he released 20 studio albums, 20, and was one of the most reliable voices in adult contemporary R&B. Not because he was chasing whatever was current, but because he simply had something genuine in his voice that people came back to year after year. And then came the Disney records. Beauty and the Beast with Celine Dion in 1992, Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a Duo, and then A Whole New World with Regina Belle from Aladdin in 1993, #1 on the pop chart, another Grammy. 2 Academy Award-winning songs.
I can open your eyes.
His voice became part of the soundtrack to childhood for an entire generation. If you have a memory of being young and feeling wonder, there's a good chance Peabo Bryson's voice was somewhere in the background. In 2019, he had a heart attack. He recovered. He kept performing. He was on stage in Warren, Michigan as recently as April of 2025. And then a stroke came. His family confirmed it in late May 2026. They asked for privacy, and a few days later, on June 2nd, he was gone, surrounded by his wife and his son, a boy born in 2018 when Peabo was 66 years old. He had become a father again in the last chapter of his life, and now that little boy grows up without him. And here's what I keep coming back to.
I'm like a shooting star.
He and Roberta Flack, number 3 on this list, recorded Tonight I Celebrate My Love Together in 1983. And now, within months of each other, both of those voices are gone.
I can show you the world.
2 people who shared something beautiful in the making of that record. I don't know what you call that. I just know it doesn't feel settled. Peabo Bryson, 25 days ago, the songs are still playing, the memories are still active, and somewhere tonight, somebody is at a wedding, and Beauty and the Beast is playing, and they don't know yet that the voice singing it went quiet this month. Number 1, Ray J. In January 2026, Ray J posted a video, and in that video, he said something that I've thought about almost every day since I heard it. He said, "My heart is only beating like 25%. And then he gestured to his chest and said, "This is black. This is like done." And then 2027 is definitely a wrap for me.
Here's my wish list. I will create a heart-changing love.
He's 45 years old, and the doctors told him what they told him. And instead of going quiet about it, he went public. Because that's Ray J. William Ray Norwood Jr. was born in Macomb, Mississippi in 1981. He's Brandy's younger brother. He grew up inside the music industry. His first album came out when he was 14 years old, and it was One Wish in 2005 that put him in a real conversation, a genuine, heartfelt R&B ballad that showed what he was capable of when the noise stepped back and the music stepped forward.
Kinda clinic. I couldn't be alone because without you I'm sick.
He could sing, he could perform, he was building something, and then the choices compounded. The controversies, the substances. In that same January 2026 video, he laid it out himself. He said he was drinking 4 or 5 bottles of alcohol a day. He said he was taking up to 10 Adderall. And he said, "I shouldn't have went this hard." And that sentence, that honest, stripped down, no excuse sentence, is one of the most real things I've heard from anyone in music in a long time.
Growing up, I was a fool, and I can't lie, I'm missing you.
Because how many people go that hard and never say it out loud? He said it out loud. He has a daughter named Melody and a son named Epic. He hadn't been able to be near them due to a restraining order, even as his health declined. He said he didn't know how drastic things had gotten, and while his friends in the background of the video were telling him he'd make it, he kept shaking his head. "Bro, I can't." And here's the part of this story that brought it back to something human for me.
Loving me, holding me, kissing me, so girl, don't tell me what I'm...
Through all of it, his sister Brandy paid his bills for the rest of the year. His parents came to pick him up from the hospital. In all the noise, in all the headlines, in all the sad details, there's a family that showed up. And if you've ever been the person who shows up for someone everyone else has written off, you know what that kind of love costs. Ray J is still here, still fighting. His heart is at 25%, and he's been told the clock is moving. But he's still getting up every day.
I gave you. As a matter of fact, I was the one who said I loved you first.
And whether you've always been a fan of his music or not, there is something in that story that is undeniably, uncomfortably human. The waste of it.
If I had one wish, we'd be best friends.
The grief of watching someone you grew up listening to come face to face with what his choices added up to. And the small, persistent, stubborn fact that he is still here.
Here's my wish list. I will create a heart-changing love.